The storm had been building all afternoon, crawling across the plains like a living thing, slow, dark, and heavy with the kind of tension that made even seasoned ranch hands stop what they were doing and look to the horizon. Out here, the land didn't give warnings lightly. When the sky turned that particular shade of bruised purple, and the wind began slicing through the grass in jagged bursts, everyone knew something was coming. Something big, something mean. Riley Thornton felt it in her bones long before she saw the clouds. She always had a strange sense for weather, danger, and anything that threatened the ranch her family had built long before she was born. Her father used to joke that she had the instincts of a wild mare and the stubbornness to match, and maybe he was right, but instincts weren't magic. They didn't stop trouble. They only helped you recognize it before it swallowed you whole. She had just finished checking the south fence line when she heard the distant rumble, not thunder, not yet, but hooves. Fast ones, urgent ones. Riders only moved like that when they were scared, or being chased. Riley pulled her horse, Dustfire, to a stop and tilted her head, listening. The wind snatched sound away faster than she could place it, but the rumble grew louder. It wasn't coming from the main road. It was cutting across the open plains, straight toward her, and then she saw her. A lone rider, leaning forward in the saddle, gripping the reins with white-knuckled desperation. Her cloak whipped behind her like a torn flag as her horse charged through the tall grass. The animal's chest was lathered with sweat. She had been running hard, too hard. Riley's stomach tightened. No one rode like that unless they were running from something, or to someone. Dustfire shifted beneath her, restless, picking up on Riley's unease. She clicked her tongue gently, easing him still, though her own pulse had begun to quicken. The rider was close enough now that Riley could make out her face, young, maybe mid-20s, frightened but determined. Jaw clenched in a way that looked less like panic and more like resolve sharpened under pressure. The woman's eyes locked onto Riley as if she had been searching for her specifically, and then, as she pulled her exhausted horse to a staggering stop, she said the words Riley never expected to hear from a stranger on the open range. "I'm yours, take me." Not whispered in longing, not spoken in romance, but cried out in raw desperation, like she was offering her life, her safety, her fate, into Riley's hands because there was no one else left to trust. Before Riley could ask a single question, the woman slid off her horse, legs nearly buckling. She grabbed Riley's saddle, steadying herself with trembling fingers. "Please," she gasped, looking over her shoulder at the horizon behind her. "They're coming. I didn't know where else to go." Riley scanned the plains, jaw tightening. The woman wasn't lying. Dust clouds were rising in the far distance, riders, several of them, moving fast. "What happened?" Riley demanded. The woman swallowed hard. "I'll explain, I promise, but not here. Not out in the open." Riley didn't hesitate. She reached down, grabbed the woman's arm, and pulled her up behind her on Dustfire's saddle. "Hold on," Riley said, "and don't look back." The woman wrapped her arms around Riley's waist, not in fear of the horse, but in fear of whatever was behind them. Riley could feel the tremble in her grip. Dustfire launched forward, hooves tearing into the earth as they raced toward the canyon trail that led back to the ranch. Wind lashed at Riley's face, stinging her skin, but she kept pushing the horse faster, cutting a clean path through the grass as thunder cracked loudly overhead. The storm wasn't waiting anymore, and neither were the riders behind them. The woman clung tighter as another crack of thunder split the sky. "They're not just after me," she said, voice breaking from the wind. "They won't stop. They won't turn back. They'll burn everything if they have to." Riley didn't answer. She needed every bit of focus to guide Dustfire through the narrowing canyon trail. Jagged rocks jutted out from the walls, and even the surest-footed horse could stumble if pushed wrong. The storm winds funneled through the canyon like a beast's howl, cold and sharp. When they reached the midpoint, Riley slowed Dustfire, letting him catch his breath. The woman loosened her grip but didn't let go completely. Riley turned her head slightly. "Talk now," the woman inhaled shakily. "My name is Mara Elling." The name meant nothing to Riley. "I was traveling with a group from Birchwater," Mara continued, voice tight. "Merchants, harmless people. But yesterday we crossed paths with a gangmen who weren't after money, or goods, or anything normal." Riley's eyes narrowed. What were they after? Mara hesitated, and that hesitation told Riley more than words could. "What did you take?" Riley pressed. Mara shook her head. "I didn't steal anything." She stopped, breath shaky. "I was carrying something for the sheriff at Birchwater. A document, a sealed one. He said it was urgent, that it needed to reach Dry Creek before month's end. And you didn't ask what was inside." Riley said it as a statement, not a question. "No," Mara whispered. "But the men who attacked us, they knew. They wanted it. All of it." Riley exhaled slowly. The West wasn't lawless, but there were pockets, places where men made their own rules and enforced them with bullets. Whoever this gang was, they weren't amateurs. "Mara," Riley said, "why bring this to me?" Mara's grip tightened again. "Because the sheriff said if anything went wrong, if I was in danger, I should find the Thornton Ranch." Her eyes met Riley's with a mixture of fear and hope. "He said your family was the only one he trusted." Riley's stomach dropped. Her father's name had weight in Dry Creek County, but this was something else. "What's in that document?" Riley asked carefully. Mara looked down at her satchel, the one she held, like it contained her heartbeat. "Something worth killing for, something worth chasing across counties." Riley rubbed her gloved fingers along Dustifire's reins, processing. And now, Mara whispered, voice trembling again, they think I have the power to ruin them. I don't, I swear I don't, but they won't believe that. Riley stared ahead as the wind of the storm whipped through the canyon. Dustfire poured restlessly at the ground beneath them, sensing tension that ran deeper than weather or terrain. Finally, Riley spoke. You said, I'm yours, take me. Why? Mara swallowed hard. Because I have nothing left except trust, and because if I stayed out there alone, I'd already be dead. Riley breathed in deeply, the smell of approaching rain filling the canyon like a warning. All right, she said at last. You're under my protection now. But listen to me carefully. If you're bringing a war to my land, I need to know exactly what we're up against. Mara nodded slowly, but she didn't speak. Not right away. And that silence, heavy, fearful knowing, told Riley that whatever truth Mara carried, it was far worse than anything she had said so far. The riders behind them were drawing closer, and the storm was about to break. The first drops of rain hit the canyon floor like warning shots, sharp, cold, and widely spaced. Not yet a storm, but the promise of one. Riley pulled her collar up as Dustfire pushed forward through the narrowing passage. Mara clung to her, not out of fear of falling, but because every instinct in her body was screaming that danger was close, too close. Behind them, the distant thunder of hooves became more defined. 3 riders, maybe 4. Hard to tell with the wind bouncing sound off the canyon walls. Riley. Mara's voice was small, barely audible over the building wind. What if your ranch isn't safe? What if I've brought something worse than you think? Riley didn't look back. Then we deal with it. That's what Thorntons do. A flash of lightning lit the canyon, illuminating the jagged rock faces like jagged teeth. Dustfire flinched beneath them but kept a steady pace. He trusted Riley's hands more than the ground under his hooves. Mara lowered her voice again, hesitant. I didn't tell you everything. Riley's jaw tightened. I figured. The sheriff, he didn't just give me a document. Riley finally slowed Dustfire and turned halfway toward Mara. The woman was pale, rain-soaked, eyes haunted. What else? Riley demanded. Mara reached into her satchel and pulled out a small, heavy-looking metal cylinder no longer than Riley's hand. The silver surface was scratched, dented and sealed with 2 brass bands, engraved with an emblem Riley recognized instantly. Her pulse stopped. The governor's crest, she whispered. Mara nodded. Riley's heart hammered. The governor of Oak Territory never sent couriers through small towns. People like him used telegraphs, armed escorts, private riders, not unknown travelers, unless this isn't a delivery, Riley said slowly. It's a secret. Mara's eyes filled with guilt. The sheriff said it wasn't safe in the capital anymore. He said certain men were working behind the scenes. Dangerous men. Men who want the governor out. Out, Riley echoed. Or dead. Mara didn't answer. She didn't have to. Riley shook her head, feeling the canyon air tighten around them. Why you? Why would he trust a stranger with something like this? Mara looked down at the cylinder, holding it with surprising reverence. Because I'm not from Birchwater. I was passing through, headed north for work. Sheriff Ackley said a traveler would draw less suspicion than a deputy. He said no one would care enough to follow someone like me. And yet, Riley murmured, someone did. Mara's breath trembled. They killed the merchants I was traveling with. Every one just to get to me. Riley stiffened. This was bigger than a threat. This was a political war spilling into the open plains. Before Riley could respond, another thunder of hooves echoed behind them, closer this time. Too close. Mara's head snapped up. Riley, I hear it. Riley guided Dustfire out of the canyon's narrow mouth, emerging into the rolling foothills leading to the Thornton Ranch. The wind cut colder here, ushering the storm overhead. Lightning flashed again, lighting the distant ridge. And for a split second, Riley saw silhouettes, 3 riders cresting the canyon behind them. She didn't need a second look. Hold tight, Riley shouted, spurring Dustfire into a gallop. The storm finally broke. Sheets of rain hammered the earth, turning dirt to mud and forcing Dustfire to fight for every stride. The ranch wasn't far not at this pace, but even a short distance became treacherous under a sky tearing itself apart. Mara clung tightly, breath shuddering. Who are they? Riley yelled over the storm. I don't know, Mara cried. Only that they're hired, paid well, and they won't leave a witness alive. Riley grimaced. Witnesses, not couriers. Not thieves. The distinction mattered, and not in a good way. As they neared the last ridge before the ranch, Dustfire stumbled slightly, catching himself as mud splattered high around his hooves. Riley guided him toward the one path she trusted, a sloping incline, less slick than the rest. But the riders behind them weren't slowing, weren't hesitating. Their horses were bred for pursuit, for violence, for outpacing fear. Almost there, Riley murmured, more to Dustfire than anyone else. The ranch came into view over the ridge, dim lights glowing through the storm, smoke rising from the chimney despite the downpour, as steady and reassuring as the heartbeat of home. Mara exhaled shakily, but Riley's muscles only tensed further, because lights in the main house meant her brother, Tate, would be awake. And Tate didn't take kindly to unexpected danger on their land. As if summoned by thought, a lone figure stood near the barn, coat flapping violently in the wind. Even from a distance, Riley recognized Tate's stance, the squared shoulders, The slight lean most people mistook for laziness until they saw the iron behind it. Dustfire barreled down the slope, hooves sliding but never fully losing traction. Tate stepped forward, expression sharpening as he realized Riley wasn't alone. What in Riley? Who the hell? No time, Riley shouted. Riders incoming. Tate's eyes darkened instantly. He grabbed Dustfire's reins as Riley and Mara dismounted in the rain. Mara stumbled, shaking violently from cold and fear. Tate looked between the two women, confusion giving way to something harder. Who's chasing you? Riley didn't waste breath. Men with badges that aren't legal and guns that are, and they're not far. Tate cursed under his breath. You brought them here. Riley shot him a glare. I brought her to safety. Tate opened his mouth but before he could argue, lightning cracked so close it shook the ground, and in that luminous flash, Riley saw them. 3 riders breaking over the ridge like wolves. Tate didn't hesitate. Get her inside, he barked. Now Riley grabbed Mara's arm and pulled her toward the house. Tate sprinted for the barn, likely going for his Winchester. Rain blinded them, wind pushing them sideways. But the riders didn't slow. They descended the ridge, horses wild-eyed, their forms dark and monstrous against the storm. Mara gasped as a shot rang out loud, sharp, too close. Riley shoved her down behind a water trough. Stay low. Another shot, then another. Tate fired back from the barn doorway, muzzle flashes bright enough to carve the darkness. The riders split formation. One aimed for the house, one for the barn, one straight for Riley. Damn it. Riley dragged Mara toward the porch, slipping in the mud as bullets tore chunks from the wooden railing. Why won't they stop? Mara cried. Because they can't, Riley shouted. Another lightning flash framed the rider charging them, a tall man. Long coat whipping violently, face hidden under a soaked hat. His horse was nearly frothing with effort. Riley pushed Mara into the house and slammed the door shut just as the rider leapt from his saddle, boots hitting the porch with a thud. Wood splintered, glass shattered. Mara screamed. Riley grabbed a heavy Castian fire poker from beside the stove. The door burst inward. A man filled the doorway, broad-shouldered, drenched, eyes wild. Rain streamed off his hat brim like blood. His voice was low, thunderous. Hand over the girl. Riley stepped between him and Mara, grip tightening around the iron. You step 1 foot closer, she said evenly, and you'll regret it. The man smirked, a cold, amused expression that didn't touch his eyes. You don't know what you're protecting, he growled. Then tell me, Riley snapped. He shook his head. My orders say the girl dies. That's all you need to know. The house creaked under the storm as they faced each other. Riley raised the iron poker. Behind her, Mara whispered, voice trembling. Riley, don't. He's too strong. Riley didn't blink. You said you were mine to protect, and I don't plan on failing. The man lunged. Riley moved. Steel met iron. Thunder shook the world. And the fight began. The intruder's shoulder hit Riley like a battering ram, knocking her backward into the dining table. Dishes clattered to the floor, shattering. The iron poker flew from her hand and slid across the wood planks beneath the kitchen counter. The man advanced with a predator's calm, like he knew the house, knew its corners, knew its weaknesses. Mara scrambled toward Riley, but the man's boots stomped the floor between them. Stay, he ordered, voice heavy with threat. Riley didn't stay. She lunged for the poker, sliding on her knees across the floor just as the man grabbed a fistful of her jacket. He tried to haul her upright, but Riley twisted, forcing her weight downward. The sudden shift made him lose footing just long enough for her fingers to brush the castron handle. She gripped it, and swung. The impact cracked like thunder inside the small room. The man staggered back, dazed, one hand bracing against the wall. Mara gasped, hands covering her mouth. Riley rose, chest heaving, rainwater dripping from her hair and clothes. Don't touch her again, she warned. The man wiped blood from his cheek with the back of his glove. You're stubborn, he muttered. Shame you don't know who you're fighting. Then educate me, Riley shot back. He smirked at that. Orders come from high up, higher than a sheriff, higher than a marshal. There's a man in Carson City who wants that courier dead so badly he put a price on her bigger than your damn ranch. Riley's stomach twisted because of what she's carrying. The man nodded once, and because she wasn't supposed to see what she saw. Mara trembled behind Riley. I didn't see anything. I don't even know what's inside this container. You don't have to, the man replied coldly. You just have to disappear. Before he could move again. Shouting erupted outside, Tate's voice roaring commands over the storm, followed by a series of gunshots. Horses screamed. One of the riders had been hit. The sound was unmistakable. The intruder's attention flicked toward the window for half a second. Half a second was all Riley needed. She rammed the poker into his shoulders, driving him stumbling back toward the open door. He caught himself on the frame, snarling. Riley grabbed Mara's wrist. Upstairs, she whispered. Now Mara didn't argue. They bolted up the steps, feet thudding against the wood as another crack of lightning lit the house. Riley shoved Mara into the far bedroom, the one with no front windows, and locked the door behind them. Mara leaned against the wall, shaking so hard Riley feared she'd collapse. Riley, her voice was barely a breath. I'm sorry, I shouldn't have brought this to you. Riley brushed wet hair from Mara's face. I'd rather you brought it to me than died in the dirt somewhere alone. Mara's eyes glistened. You didn't have to protect me. Riley didn't answer. Her whole life, her training, her grit, her instincts had led her to one simple truth. You protect the vulnerable when no one else will. And right now, Mara was the most vulnerable person in the territory. Downstairs, with splintered, the intruder was back inside. Mara's voice cracked. What do we do? Riley looked around the room. Her old hunting bow hung over the dresser. The quiver sat beneath it. She crossed the room, grabbed both, and checked the string. Still tight, still reliable. Stay behind me, Riley said. No matter what. Mara hesitated. Riley met her gaze, storm meeting storm. I mean it. Another crash downstairs. Heavy footsteps. Closer. Riley knocked an arrow and positioned herself slightly left of the door. The footsteps reached the top of the stairs. Then the hallway. Then right outside. Mara held her breath. The door handle rattled, then twisted. Then the door exploded inward. The intruder stood framed in the doorway, breathing hard, soaked in rain and sweat, fury etched into every line of his face. He stepped into the room with the deliberateness of a man who'd made peace with killing. You two are making this a whole lot harder than it has to be, he growled. Riley didn't wait. She released. The arrow struck his shoulder, driving him backward, slamming him into the hall wall. He roared in pain but didn't fall. He ripped the arrow out, blood gushing down his coat sleeve. You're going to pay for that, he snarled. He charged. Riley barely dodged as he lunged, swinging the punctured arm like a club. She ducked, rolled, grabbed the metal candlestick off the nightstand, and struck him across the side of the head. He staggered again but kept fighting. Riley, Mara cried. The man seized Riley by the arm, yanking her against the dresser so hard it knocked the air from her lungs. He pinned her there, one hand around her throat, not crushing, but threatening enough to make her vision pulse. You're done, he hissed. Riley's fingers scrambled along the dresser surface, searching. Her hand closed around something cold. The brass-fastened cylinder. Mara must have set it there when they ran upstairs. The intruder's eyes widened. You shouldn't touch that, he growled. Riley's voice rasped. Seems like everyone wants this more than they want to stay alive. That's right, he gritted, and now you've seen it. Which means you're done too. Before he could tighten his grip, a wooden crack split the air behind him. Mara had struck him across the back with Riley's old wooden chair. The man stumbled. Riley seized her moment. She slammed the cylinder directly into the rider's temple. He collapsed to the floor, at last heavy, unmoving, finally unconscious. Riley fell to her knees, gasping, adrenaline tearing through her veins. Mara dropped beside her, reaching out with shaking hands to steady her. Riley, are you hurt? Did he? I'm fine. Riley breathed. I'm fine. Are you okay? Mara nodded, though tears welled in her eyes. I thought he would kill you. Riley brushed Mara's cheek, gentler than the storm outside. He almost did. But you saved me. Mara lowered her gaze. You saved me first. Riley tightened her hold on Mara's hand. Seems we're even. Tate's boots thundered up the stairs. Riley, he shouted. You two are you? He froze in the doorway at the sight of the unconscious rider on the floor. Well, Tate muttered. Looks like the real fight wasn't here. Riley pushed to her feet. Is it over outside? Two fled, Tate said. One's down. Last one ran when he realized he wasn't getting paid enough to die. Sheriff's deputies are on their way if they heard the shooting. Riley glanced at the cylinder still clutched in her hand. And what about the governor? She asked quietly. And whoever hired these men? Tate's jaw tightened. That's trouble for another dawn. Mara rose slowly, stepping beside Riley. I don't want to bring danger to your family. Riley shook her head. You brought truth. And truth brings danger all on its own. The storm outside began to ease. Rain softened. Thunder drifted farther away. The first hint of dawn lightened the horizon through the window. Mara exhaled shakily. Riley. Earlier when I said I'm yours. Riley looked at her. Mara's voice softened. I meant it. Riley swallowed, heart pounding in a way no threat had ever caused. Then stay until this is over. Stay until we know what's inside this thing, and why men are willing to die for it. Mara nodded. I'll stay. Tate rolled his eyes skyward but smirked. Well, if you two are done making dramatic promises, let's tie this guy up before he wakes and decides round two sounds fun. Riley gave Mara one last glance, one filled with all the unspoken warmth the night had carved between them, then stepped into the hall. The storm had passed, but the real war was only beginning.